Welcome, everybody, to episode 47 of UnHacked. I did it right this time. This is take two, guys, because I really screwed that up. Somehow we reverted to episode 17. I don't know. Time machine engaged. Guys, we, as always, have a special guest here today. We're going to do some quick intros. UnHacked is a podcast where we sit down week after week and we talk about how we could keep business owners like you from being breached by the Russian hackers. And as Mario pointed out last week, it's more than just the Russians, but I do like to pick on them. B, keep the government out of our bank accounts and businesses. I mean, they're there, but we want to keep them happy anyways. And C, if all that fails, we want to make sure that the attorneys don't come sniffing around and taking the rest of our money. So a lot at stake here, and we are here to prevent all of it because here's the reality of it. 97% of these breaches that we read about were preventable. Basic security measures. We're going to talk about frameworks. We're going to talk about how to put these measures into place. But if you don't do that, and if you get hacked, you're done. It's game over a lot of times. You really cannot get unhacked. So it's a little bit of a misnomer. We are not talking about how to fix it after the fact. We're talking about how to make it never happen in the first place. I am Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors. I work with businesses in Texas, Utah, and Idaho. And I'm here, as always, with my faithful, loyal co-host, Mario. Mario, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
I'm Mario Zaki, CEO of Mastic IT. We specialize in working with small to medium-sized businesses in the New York, New Jersey area. We've been in business. Oh my God, I might have to take my own pick.
It's all of us today. I don't know. Lori, you're next. You better screw something up.
Oh boy.
21 years now, and we specialize in everything Justin just said, keeping businesses safe from all those hackers around the world, and we specialize in helping business owners sleep better at night.
See, Mario's afraid of the Russians. That's why he won't call them out by name. I chew them up and spit them out for fun. Not true. Okay, so Mario, as always, thanks for being here. And now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. Lori Crooks is the founder and CEO of Cadra Inc. Is that how did I say that right, Lori?
Yes,
Cadra.
you did.
Okay. Your organization focuses on security assessments and security management projects. So there's some similarities to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
A career focused in information security assessments, developing policies and procedures, everybody's favorite topic, and advising clients regarding their information security requirements. Laura, you bring an understanding of information security controls to all of your clients. Say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello. Thank you for having me on the podcast today. So as Justin mentioned, I am the CEO of Cadra. I live in Atlanta with my husband and my dog. I've been doing audits and assessments for about 20 years now. So I've been around, I've seen a lot of changes, and excited to talk about it today.
Nice.
Audits and assessments for 20 years. Everybody's like, yes.
Yes. Dream come true. And this is what I grew up wanting to be when I was a child.
All right. Mario?
No,
I
was going to ask you one question, but now I want to ask you two questions. A, what's the dog's name? And B, when you work with these, when you do this, do you work with like companies like us, like managed service providers, or do you work directly with the company themselves?
Sure. Well, we'll cover the most important thing first. My dog, she is my pride and joy, but her name is Georgia. I know we're living in Atlanta, but she was born and bred in Georgia. So her name is Georgia. So she's a wicked spaniel, if anyone's familiar with that, but she's
Nice.
the sweetest thing. So back to the not so boring, but still boring side. We work with all types of clients, to be honest. We work directly with customers, helping them prepare for their audits, prepare for their assessments, document the policies, procedures. But we do have some partners who are SPs, and we help them with their clients, again, preparing for any audits, doing spot checks, gap assessments, that type of thing. So we're happy to work with anyone who needs assistance.
Awesome.
Now, Laura, you said something, and I've been poking fun at the policies and procedures. It's mostly because when I go out and try to talk to somebody about this, they just don't get excited with me. I actually do love this kind of thing. But you said it's exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I thought you were being serious, and then ... I lie.
Yes.
Sounds like there's a story there. Tell me how you got into this, if it's not what you dreamed of doing as a little girl.
Yeah, you go to college, you have these big dreams of becoming a medical doctor or physical therapist or something like that. But once I started getting into those classes, I was like, this is not for me. So I kind of floundered a little bit. I went down the teaching degree for a little bit. I did psychology for a little bit. Like I couldn't find anything that fit. And then I finally ended up in financial accounting of all things. And it just, the numbers made sense, literally, for me. And so I ended up doing financial auditing for a while. Did that as a career for about a year and a half before I got bored crunching numbers and was working for the state of Georgia. And somebody literally upstairs was hiring for cybersecurity auditing. And they asked me to apply. And I said, sure. And applied and never looked back. So long story short, that's how I ended up in cybersecurity. Not what I wanted to do, but that's where I'm at, and I actually enjoy it a lot now.
I think that's what we all have that same answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, not what I wanted to do. I mean, listen, I've told this before many times, but I got into this business because I like pulling circuit boards out of my Apple IIe and plugging in something different, adding memory back when it was like 12 bytes, or, I mean, obviously not true, but it just started blowing my mind as things developed and constant change, and technology kept getting better and better and cheaper, and it was just a rush. I loved it from the time I was a little kid. Then one day a client got hacked. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not in the business of putting in sound cards. I'm in the business of fighting Russian hackers. And they actually were from Russia. So that's why I say that. And then it's evolved even more, because it's like, we're not just fighting the hackers now. We're fighting the government. We're fighting attorneys. It's turned into a lot of legal stuff. I'm not an attorney, but now I have to act and think like one. I'm not an auditor, but I have to prevent against those. So interesting developments, right?
Yes.
We have to fight employees now too, because
I know
these employees are just clicking and opening and deleting and all this stuff. It's like, come on, like, why would you just do any of this stuff? But
yeah,
no
it's
kidding.
a typical day.
I might have to add that one into my rant. We're protecting against our employees. And that's the well-meaning ones, because, we don't really talk much about the malicious ones that, on their way out, they set kill switches and stuff like that. That was a recent headline I read. Good stuff. All right. So on this note, I've been intentionally playful about this. Why do I care? And that's what I want to talk about. So I'm going to put my business owner hat on, because it is what I am. And like, realistically, I don't have any anticipation that I'm going to get audited. Probably, not a lot of regulations apply. And this is kind of a scary fact, but in the IT world, we are not directly regulated. Indirectly, we kind of are through our clients, but directly, we don't have frameworks that we have to follow. Have good security in place. Why, Lori, does compliance matter to me?
Because it should. That's the easy answer. But no, because you have data to protect, you have your clients to protect. It's like you at home, you want to protect your house, you want to protect everything in it. That's basic compliance. You're trying to protect your business. You're trying to protect the data that you have inside of it. You don't want to become hacked, like you said at the beginning of this. So what are some ways to prevent that from happening? Well, it's basic cybersecurity compliance. And compliance is great because there are frameworks out there that can tell you what controls should be in place to help prevent against anybody trying to steal that data that you need to run your business. And if you lose that data, you could lose your company, you could be sued, you could end up paying millions of dollars of fines for various things. So it's scary if you don't have compliance and security in place.
So I will agree 100%. It's a prevention, right? I mean, like, if we're being honest, it's insurance. We have to buy life insurance, for example. But here's the truth. I don't plan on dying. So do I really need life insurance? I mean, obviously if I do, but it can be a hard sell from our perspective. And as a client who's getting ready to write this big check, because compliance is not cheap, it's a significant investment. So, while prevention is a huge part of it, 100% agree. Let's see if we can maybe brainstorm some actual benefits that besides just, because here's the best case scenario when we're selling compliance and cybersecurity in general, protective measures. It's best case scenario, nothing happens. Mm-hmm. The ROI is nothing. You get nothing for your investment, right? That's it. One example though that I can point to, for example, CMMC, right? Here's a, if you are doing manufacturing and you're working for government contracts, specifically Department of Defense, you have to be compliant. You have to go through their process. Now, the benefit there, though, is you can actually you can get a lot of contracts that your competitors aren't. So you can gain a competitive advantage with compliance. What about that? What else is there besides that where compliance, where this investment can actually turn into something, an ROI of sorts, instead of just a check that we write with a best case outcome of 0? Mario, thoughts? Lori, anybody?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So like, using your example, like in the managed services world, and we know, somebody in our weekly group that is compliant with CMMC and only works with companies that require to be certified in CMM or compliant in CMMC. He's able to charge top dollar, for his services, because it's a group, select group of people that can help him become compliant and stay compliant with that certification. So you become a specialty, when you're compliant with some of the stuff.
Okay, Lori, any thoughts there?
No, I agree. I think it definitely is an advantage. You'll see a lot of times contracts now have security as a baseline. You need to have some basic cybersecurity in place to protect the customer's data. And if you already have that in place, it does give you that competitive advantage over something else you might not.
Okay. Here's another thought. Let's say that I don't fall under any regulatory frameworks. I don't need CMMC. My clients don't require it. I actually have to comply with HIPAA because I have clients in healthcare. But let's say I don't. None of these things directly apply to me. Is there a benefit there? I mean, again, we've got the obvious of we want to protect everything that we have. Even related to that, or what other benefits are there where compliance isn't required, but might still be an advantage to a business? Any thoughts?
Well, I think it also depends on the type of compliance everybody has some sort of compliance that they have to go through. So for example, and we actually just renewed ours yesterday, our PCI compliance. So If you take credit cards at all, if you accept credit cards, no matter if it's, a physical machine on your website, verbal or something, if you take any type of credit cards, you have to be compliant. Which we definitely recommend, and we've mentioned it in all 46 other episodes that we've done, if you have cybersecurity insurance, you have to be compliant with, what they're requiring. Some of the things that they're asking is, do you have two-factor authentication? Do you have backup? Do you have this? If you're saying yes to any of it, that you have to be compliant by that. So there's everybody, 90% of the, businesses out there, fall between certain categories like PCI, cybersecurity. Even some states like New York State require you to be compliant with certain things. Just if you are doing business in that state, you have to be compliant in that state. Right, Lori? I'm sure you know about it more than I do.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree. There's a lot of different standards out there that you have to be compliant with. Like you said, credit cards, healthcare information, you have to be HIPAA. And kind of going back to Justin's comment too, like if you don't have credit card data or you don't have healthcare data, there are standards out there that you can still apply if you have to have some sort of compliance for industry or for insurance purposes or state purposes. For example, like the NIST cybersecurity framework, CSF, that's a great starting point. And that really is for small businesses. They've just kind of redone it where they make it more accessible to small organizations to actually have some sort of framework that they could use for cybersecurity. or you could look at like an ISO 27001, which is more of an industry international standard. And so that's really talking about management systems and being compliant from a management system from the top down. And so a lot of organizations who, again, might not have to comply with stuff and actually choose to put all this in, there are options out there for them as well.
So here's two things that come to my mind. Number one, and I'm putting my CEO hat back on. I'm not a cybersecurity expert right now. And let's just say I don't really know anything at all about cybersecurity, but I'm writing a check every month to the company who is telling me that I am properly protected. How do I know? And this is something I run into all the time too when I'm talking to prospects. I'm like, hey, we can do a third-party assessment for you or whatever. And listen, I get it. They don't know who I am yet. They don't trust me yet. But I always hear this phrase: we're covered. My IT company has us covered. My IT guy has me covered. And I don't push, but what I'd love to say is, prove it. How do you know? How do you know? Because you're writing a check. That's all you need to know that you're safe. Well, guess what? When you get breached, you know who they're coming after? It's not your IT guy. I mean, it might indirectly, but Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, they're coming after you. That's who you're going to, they don't care about anything else. It's still your fault that these protections weren't in place. So if you're writing that check and you're happy and you're sleeping well at night and you don't have any way to really hold your IT company accountable, I'd be worried. I'd be nervous. And then this is one that really never gets talked about, is in marketing. So if we just kind of flip the roles now, whatever my industry is, and I'm trying to sell something to a client or a patient or a customer, whatever you call your, who you're serving, and I'm in this transaction, they're giving me personal information. I'm going to lead with that. Like, hey, we're whatever, we can do NIST, we can do CIS, we can whatever, we can prove now. And last week we talked about SOC 2, which is another great one. But when we can say, here is the framework that we're following, here's our audit, our assessment, even if it's internal, we really would like that to be a third-party assessment. But now we can, we know that people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. How do we get that trust piece? So I think it's a missed opportunity where we can use compliance as a way to really promote our businesses. So my soapbox is over. Guys, any final thoughts on why we should care as business owners about compliance?
Yeah, I'll speak to that just a little bit. Talking about depending on your IT provider, just an example that I had recently who, again, small business, had an IT provider that they knew and trusted. And we came in because they had to go through a kind of an internal assessment. We came in, we started looking to see what this IT provider was doing, and not everything that IT provider said that was being done was being done. For example, VPNs weren't being encrypted. So all the information that they were sending back and forth was out in clear text. It could have been intercepted at any point in time, and it was sensitive data. Antivirus wasn't turned on for all computers, simple things like that. So it goes back to my motto, trust but verify. Like, there should be some sort of check on an IT provider, whether, like you said, is it internal assessment, is it external assessment? And it really goes to continuous monitoring these days as well. It's like you should always be checking and just double checking to make sure that things are in place, because you never know what might get turned off accidentally, or it just never got put in place in the first time.
Let me ask you a question on the this transaction, this relationship. What was the confidence level of the one writing the check in their IT provider previous to the assessment?
It was good. There was full trust. Fortunately, it's a small business. They don't know anything about security or IT.
Right.
They're focused on their part of the business, and they had outsourced it to somebody and thought it was being done and didn't know to check, and it could have been bad at the end of the day.
So, Laura, you mean to tell me you have to turn on the antivirus on every single computer?
At least centralized.
Shit,
they did not have a central management system. Yes.
Yeah.
Please, every computer should be encrypted, have antivirus.
Well,
On a
listen, we're
lock
laughing,
screen.
but Mario, do you ever have your prospects? I don't really get this much from clients, but where they say, because we're in the negotiating the price phase, and they're like, we don't really use this computer that much. Let's leave it unprotected. Do you ever get that one?
Absolutely.
I get that all the time. All the time. Probably almost 100% of the time.
And I tell them, I'm like, listen, we don't make you run through a lot of hoops. We a lot of white glove, support and stuff like that. We only have one rule, and that one rule is everything has to be covered. And I tell them, you're only going to be as strong as your weakest link. If you have that computer that only the intern uses during the summer, then that computer needs to be disconnected all year except for when they're coming in, and then that's when we reconnect it, and that's when we put the security on. But if it's not being used, for 9 months out of the year, that needs to be disconnected, put in a closet somewhere. It cannot be active.
Right. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Mario, I'm going to go ahead and punt this one over to you.
Yeah. So, Lori, I wanted to kind of, paint a little picture here. So say I'm a CEO of a company, say 50 employees, specializing in, I don't know, construction industry or something like that. And, I'm the CEO and I wear a million hats, and something like this, slips through the cracks. And I realize, oh, what? It's time I have to do this, or somebody's, requiring this. Kind of run through with me, like, what does it look like? How do you get started? How does that picture look like?
Yeah, sure. So it starts off with a phone call most of the time. And then I talk to them about what kind of data they have. Where is this requirement coming from? And just try to figure out what, if it is a regulatory standard, what they have to comply with, so we could kind of go from there. Typically, we do a gap assessment as well. So once we sign the contract and we kind of get in there, we take that standard and we do an assessment against it, just kind of an internal assessment to see what is in place, what isn't in place, and then work with them through a remediation process for anything that's not in place. Typically, those also don't have policies and procedures. Again, you're a CEO of a construction company, you have a billion things going on, you're not going to have time to document stuff. So we help document any of those policies, procedures that are necessary for your organization and for the compliance standard that you have to meet. So it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of us kind of helping you throughout the process, getting understanding of your environment, and helping you fix what might be broken.
I've got a question on that though, because again, I've kind of been talking about the pain of the process. I want to know if there's some value in it on the other side, but can I ask you what the price tag is on this? And again, we'll use great example, Mario, 50 employee construction firm. I'm not sure which framework we're going to talk about there, but let's say they're building something for DoD. Let's call it CMMC. What time frames and cost? What are we looking at?
Gosh, that's a good question, because it can range.
And give me the range. I know that.
Yeah.
So let's do, without putting you on the spot, let's just do a
Yes.
high and low, a best case and worst case scenario.
Yeah, for full implementation, I would probably say, and this is with like tooling and stuff, probably mid 5 figures, so maybe starting at 50,000, maybe a little bit more. 3 to 6 months is probably the short end of it. Again, that's just really small, and with the tooling. So it could be a little less, depending on the tools that you get, because there are tools out there for CMMC that you just put your environment and their environment, and then you're covered. But those typically come at a little bit higher cost because they're managing and taking most of the risk.
Right.
And then the higher end could be, 6 figures, 12 plus months.
Ooh, 6 figures. This is exactly the problem, right? This is, and where I'm asking, what if these don't apply? Should we still do it? Here's where the pushback is, because this is not simple. This is, and definitely not cheap.
Yeah, most of the time, if it doesn't apply, they're going to avoid it.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about even on the low end, like say $50,000. That's, even if it's $10,000, it's something that nobody's going to want to just voluntarily do. but they have to understand that, you know, if they need it, if they're in an industry that requires it, they have to do it. But, you know, it also pertains to a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for months, is getting those, you know, in the event a hack happens or a breach happens, all right, what's going to end up happening is those lawyers are going to come around, and, you know, lawsuits are going to come around. And if you say, hey, we've taken the proper precaution to protect ourselves, you know, nobody's going to guarantee 100%, you know, protection, but hey, we're compliant. We, you know, here's our latest compliance report. You know, we've been proactive in upgrading this and this and this. You know what? There's no case. You know, it just, you know, the hackers ended up just winning that day, but, you know, you did everything you were supposed to do. And, you know, chances are there won't be a valid lawsuit, at least.
I'm going to throw an example out there, and I'm going to get a little shout out to Hats AI, HATZ, Hats AI. Mario, are you familiar with, oh God, I can't talk. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Okay. So one of the problems with AI is that the data that it ingests, when we feed it information, it uses that to train future models. That becomes part of the IP of the AI engine, right? So they now own your data. This can be a major security problem. So Hat AI, what they do is they've got these their own secured environment where I can put my stuff into that, and I know it stays there. Now, back to my point of using this as a marketing advantage, they're not required by any regulatory agencies to be secure, but they've gone out and got their SOC 2. I think they have Type 1, and they're getting ready for 2. So they are they've been assessed by a third party. They're following frameworks. That's their proof that they're keeping my data secure. So I am much more likely to pay them, and I'm actually getting ready to cut out some other services that I've been using because I don't have that same level of assurance from them. So now all of a sudden, this investment, which is large, we can use as a major competitive advantage and possibly even squeeze out some of the competition. I do think that there is definitely a financial benefit to becoming compliant, even though nobody wants to have it forced down their throat by the government, which is where this usually comes into play. All right. Any other thoughts on this one, guys? Either one of you?
No, just to your point too, Justin, a lot of my clients come to me because they are, through contractual obligation, have to go through a SOC 2.
Right.
So it's something that their customers are requiring. They're like, okay, if I want to sign this, you know, I need this type of audit. Yeah. So it is happening a lot.
I mean, really, we can look at it as developing skills, investing into our, you know, in anything. Jesus, it's one of those days. You know, all the stuff that the time and the money that we put into bettering ourselves and bettering our business. This really is a place where we can do that, and if done properly with the right mindset, we can leverage this to really springboard our organization. So, Lori, one thing you said, which kind of caught my attention when Mario asked what the process looks like. You said what you find on your initial assessment is that they usually don't have policies and procedures in place. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you find? Do they have anything?
Honestly, they'll usually have some technical controls in place. They'll usually have a firewall. They might have some basic AV. So they'll have some technical controls in place. But when it comes to some of the management, operational policies, procedures, those are usually lacking. There's not usually a risk assessment. There's not usually vendor assessments, you know, those types of things. So they're trying with the technical piece, which is great. But for cybersecurity compliance, you kind of need a little bit of everything.
Do you find the basics? I mean, let's talk about BYOD policies or acceptable use policies. Do you usually find those in place or no?
Sometimes. I'll sometimes see acceptable use policies, rules of behavior policies. Those are the most likely that I see, because usually from a legal standpoint, they might have to have users sign them as part of the onboarding agreement.
So let's take that example, one that you do find in place, and you just said the attorneys made them do it. This wasn't really something they wanted to do. What happens, generally speaking, in your experience? they've created the policy. They make people sign it when they onboard, which, by the way, is making somebody sign something under duress, if you think about it. And fun fact, my attorney once told me that you cannot I can't bring in a new policy and make my employees sign it. I can entice them to sign it, but I can't make them sign it. You can do it when you bring them in, but once they're hired, you can't be like, oh, new policy here, sign this. So there's some fun ins and outs there.
Interesting.
But I had to bribe them, basically, according to my attorney. And I don't know, this has been a while, but he's like, you have to pay them, like offer them $100 to sign the policy, in consideration. I don't remember all the legal terms, but there's a lot of fine print in this stuff. But what is generally the attitude when, at least let's just go for this one that they have in place? Is there any kind of like ongoing discussion or culture around it, or is it just sign this with the stack, by the way, of 100 pages that you just had to read and sign off on? What does it look like after the fact?
Yeah, like you said, it's usually sign off and then it sits there until the next person gets onboarded, and then they have to sign it. Especially for like acceptable use policies, if those have to go through a legal review again, it usually just sits there and they just sign the same thing. Every person.
How often do you find them being reviewed on average?
Not very often, to be honest. If they don't have to comply with anything, it's usually once and done. I'll go in and have policies that are 5, 6, 7 years old. They wrote it. They haven't looked at it. They're just making people sign it.
It's like, don't use MySpace on company time.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
Roy, once, you mentioned, the onboarding, the setup, 3 to 6 months, could be a year. What happens after that 1 year? Do they retain you for like a, monthly, call, 6 months, something like that? What happens after the initial, and then after, like, all right, here's our, SOC 2 compliance certificate, plaque, whatever they give you, I don't know, trophy.
That'd be nice. I think they used to, very early days, I think some SOC 2s, they would send out like little plaques. Some companies did. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, so they kind of retain me for a little bit, just on a monthly basis. There's usually a small retainer fee, so I'm available for phone calls if they have questions. But let's take a step back. Most standards have an annual audit. So once you become SOC 2 compliant, it doesn't mean you're done you actually have to go through an audit the following year as well. So what I like to do from that in-between period from 1 year to the next is to make sure, again, controls are still being in place, continuous monitoring, we call it, is being done. The policies are being reviewed throughout that year, making sure HR is doing their job by bringing people on, security training is being done, etc. So yeah, we help them on a monthly basis based on the type of framework that they have and the controls that they need reviewed throughout that year. And we just kind of spot check throughout the year to make sure everything works properly. And then we help them next year prepare by pulling the evidence, gathering it, working with the auditors if they need our help like that.
Got it.
Well, Larry, I want to say that you have confirmed my initial hypothesis that people don't like policies and procedures. This is not something people talk about over a beer after work. But they're important, right? Can we agree on that? Like, at least in this room, we can agree on that. Do you have any tips or tricks for a business owner to maybe build a culture or do something to make these things more than just a document that gets signed under duress and then put in a file and never looked at again?
Yeah, it really comes from the top. If you want to build a culture around cybersecurity, it becomes with awareness, training, making it fun. A lot of the training programs now are more interactive, they're more gamified. And so it kind of takes those policies and breaks them down into things that people can actually understand and relate to on a regular basis and makes it fun. I'm using the air quotes as much as you can make policies fun, but they try to make it fun through the games, the kind of examples and quizzes and stuff like that. So I think that's the best way to do it. It's just a reminder too. It's like reminding people monthly, every other week, like, hey, don't forget this tip that's from your information security policy, or this tip to don't leave your laptop in the car so somebody can steal it. Those types of things are good as well.
Do you have any examples of the gamification?
I'm trying to think now. Now that I say that, I haven't used one personally, but there are a lot of more like fun videos where you can like click on emails to open, or you click on like poster boards to try to find something um, kind of unusual within the room, stuff like that. So it's been a
Okay.
while, but I remember kind of going through one a while ago. So it was interesting.
I had this has been a while, but when we in our company, when we switched to a new vendor for security awareness training,
Mhm.
and one of the things that they had was a leaderboard. And
Oh,
at this time, anyways, my techs were very competitive. And so they would run around bragging about their score, their risk score, and like, I'm better than you. I loved it. And what has frustrated me ever since is the same company that has this leaderboard. When each employee signs themselves up or, goes in and configures their account, it randomizes their username so that nobody else knows who it is. I'm like, why in
that
the
defeats the
world?
purpose.
I know it. And I keep asking them, I'm never going to quit until they actually develop this. I want a kiosk display with real names where we can publicly reward and also publicly shame and humiliate
Yeah.
based on their score of, are they clicking on the stupid phishing emails? Are they reading and accepting the policies and procedures? Because that's part of
Mhm.
it. Are they taking the annual training? Are they taking the weekly micro trainings?
Yep.
But I do think that until we find a way to really make this part of our culture, we're never going to have anything other than dusty policies.
Yeah. Agreed.
They're just because the government or the attorneys made us do it, or more realistically, they're just not there at all. Now that we've fully developed this fun topic of policies, let's get into, tell me, and I know there's a lot of frameworks, but if we just could pick a couple, let's say 1, 2, maybe 3 policies that are the most bang for the buck, what would you say those are?
We talked about the acceptable use policy. I think that one's important. Again, rules of behavior, how people should be using their computer, how they shouldn't be using their computer, how they should be using the data and stuff. So definitely acceptable use policy, I'd say, is one of the top ones. Typically, we see information security policy too. And this is more geared towards cybersecurity as a whole, more towards some of the IT people as well, but it's good for general users to read through as well. And then I'd say incident response, I would say probably be my round out the top 3. As we all know, unfortunately, we're probably going to have an incident, knock on wood, at some point in time. So there should be a policy for your IT department on how they need to detect that, how they need to investigate that, how they need to respond to that, and how they need to notify people that there is a potential incident.
Okay.
Have you been seeing a lot of AI policies coming up?
I have some. AI, I think, is getting a little bit better, but kind of what Justin was saying earlier, I hesitate telling people to put stuff in it because you don't know where it's being stored on the back end, what's going to happen. But I think AI can be good in generic policies, but you still have to kind of fine tune it for your organization and kind of the people that you have and the tools that you have within the organization.
Okay.
So Laura, you quickly kind of mentioned what should be included in an incident response plan. Let's talk about the acceptable use and the information security policy. What are just like some key components, headlines that need to be in those policies? How would I write one?
Yeah, sure. Acceptable use is really, as it says, it's what you can use your computer for, what you can use company information for. And this is usually the one that the lawyers like to sign and review because it's telling people what you can and can't do with the company information. So don't post company information on websites. Don't go out on X now and save all the company data or share all the company data. Don't use public Wi-Fi when you're transferring sensitive information. Like those types of things should be included in your acceptable use policy for users to understand this is good things to do with the company information. This is bad things to do with company information. And so then you have your information security policy, which really could take a lot of different topics and kind of roll up into one. So it could include access control. So it could talk about your username and password policy. where your passwords are a minimum of 8 characters and special numbers and special letters and numbers and all that combination. It could include um, some remote access, so telling users they need to use a VPN as part of logging in remotely from their home into the work area. So words are hard today too for me, Justin. So you're not the only one struggling.
With that last part said, and I don't know about you, Justin, but I get this every once in a while. Almost every new customer we set up for and tighten up security, we have at least one employee for this customer that says, I don't want to use 2FA, or I don't want to use my personal phone for two-factor authentication. What we usually tell them is like, this is the same person that's probably sitting there texting all day while they're supposed to be working. But what do you usually, how do you usually attack something like that?
That's a good question. It kind of goes to the company at that point in time. Like, are they willing to buy them a second phone to have that authentication? Otherwise, you have to use some sort of hard token, which, again, most people aren't going to want to deal with anymore either to plug into their laptop every time they log in. So I don't think there's a way around it. I think two-factor authentication is here to stay. And so somebody either buys them a separate phone to use it if the company's good with that, or they just get the push notification to their phone. So
yeah, I usually give them those two options, or I usually give them a third option is tell them to get the hell out of the office.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, and again, on the subject of just creating a positive culture, we want to make people some skin in the game, interested in it. If they're pushing back, first of all, I would want to find out why. What's the real problem with using your phone? Is it that you just don't want to use it? Then fine, here's a second phone. Is it that you feel like you shouldn't be financially supporting the company? Then fine, here's $30 a month or $20 a month or whatever to offset your cost for your cell phone, or to show you that we care. But Mario, you're right. Ultimately, if we can't in some way get them into this security-minded culture, they can't be there. They've got to go. Like 100%, if you've got somebody that's a security risk, fire them, right?
Yeah.
Just ask Donald Trump. You're fired.
And that's exactly what I've had conversations with. I'm like, listen, if you're asking me to not enable it just for this employee, the answer is no. It's not going to happen. Unless you want to sign off on a bunch of stuff saying, you know what, don't call us when something happens, which nobody ever agrees to, but, we tell them like those are the people that, will end up clicking on something and, causing a problem. And, like you have to be firm, and like this is the, price of doing business, or being an employee of this company. You have to use two-factor authentication, and you get one of those people like every once in a while. It's like I don't want to use my personal phone.
And then it comes down to, again, I would want to find out why. Is there a valid reason for it? Fine, I'll accommodate. Is it just because you want to be an ass? Well, then you don't fit our culture and you got to go, right? I mean, because if you've only got a handful of people that are being, we can call this defiant, again, unless there's a real reason for it, then we don't want them there anyways. Like if they're not going to follow this policy, what else are they not going to do? And I mean, it just seems like this person probably needs a therapist more than a second phone. Just my thoughts. All right, guys. Listen, I think we've kind of covered everything that I had in mind for the day. Is there anything else? Have we missed anything, Lori, that you would like to talk about before we wrap up?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
This is a great conversation.
Perfect. So then let's go ahead and do this. I kind of like to wrap up with key takeaways. Let's assume that nobody listened to anything but this part of the podcast. What do you want them to know about everything we discussed today? And Lori, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'll give you a minute. I'm going to have Mario go first. So you've got as long as it takes him to answer this question to think up your own answer. And then I'll have you give yours. and then I'll tell people how to get a hold of you, and we'll go ahead and wrap up for the week. So Mario, key takeaway for this week. What do you got?
For me, a key takeaway for this is that it's every business out there is gonna fall under some sort of bucket, some sort of compliance, like we mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, it could be something small like PCI, or it could be something huge like CMMC. But if at the very minimum, if you have some of these policies in place, you'll be ahead of the game, probably stand out from, competitors and have a better workplace, better culture, for your employees and for your customers.
Okay. All right, Lori,
Perfect.
your turn.
Pressure's on. No, I think it goes back to I think Justin said it best too. It's kind of the culture of compliance and cybersecurity. I think it's important for cybersecurity to start at the top and go down through the organization. And that's really the only way everyone is going to get on board, is if you have that appropriate culture. And I think that should be for every organization, whether there's a regulatory standard out there for you or not. I think it's important, and it gives you that competitive advantage.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with the whole start at the top. And it's, I say this out of experience, because getting the leadership to go through the cybersecurity awareness training, they don't feel like they have time for that, largely speaking. I'm not saying it's 100%, but that is a constant problem. And I'm sorry, but if you aren't doing that, if you're not personally taking it serious, you cannot expect those that work for you to do any better. You just can't. So 100% agree with that. I would say my key takeaway today is that everything that we are dealt in life can be, I'm going to put some asterisks on there. There are exceptions to this rule. Generally speaking, we can look at things as a problem, or we can look at them as an advantage. And so where we are forced into a world where we do have to prove that we are taking security measures seriously, whether that's through mandated compliance or voluntary compliance, I really believe that this can be an advantage to us personally, because while I was sleeping ignorantly by writing a check thinking my IT company had me covered, now I at least have some confidence in them if I know that they're following the frameworks and maybe even pushing them on me. But then the other side of that, when I'm trying to sell my services to somebody else, when I can show that I'm doing this, that I'm taking their privacy seriously, and I've got it backed up, I can document it. I really do believe that to be a competitive advantage where we can probably reclaim a significant amount of the investment to get there in the first place. So that's my take on it. Lori, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and plug your services, Cadra.com, Cadra.com. And we always have links to our guests, so you can go on UnHacked.live and get more information about Lori, who she is. But Lori, if you want to say anything, any elevator pitch or any final words about your business, what you do, who you do it for, you're welcome to do that now.
Sure. So we focus on small to medium-sized businesses who might not understand cybersecurity compliance and what the need is. And we try to take complex environments and legal language and kind of tone it down so the normal person can understand. And we help implement and walk you through that process. We handhold through the entire process from beginning to end, and help you get through the assessment for whatever compliance standard that you need.
And I think I heard you say earlier that you do on occasion work with MSPs like us if they want some help from an outside firm. So
yes,
we do get some of our peers listen to our show, so we'll put that plug out there for you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Mario, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. And
thank you, Justin.
Guys, like I said, if you have any you want to check us out on UnHacked.live, we've got all of our links up there to our guests, to our social media. We have free assessments that we offer. Go ahead and hit up UnHacked.live. And until then, thank you guys both for being here, and we will see you guys next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.